Captain Elias Morrow stood alone on the observation deck of the outpost, his eyes tracing the jagged rocks of the Andarian belt. The station creaked around him, its metal walls groaning under the strain of decades in orbit. Supplies were low. Systems were failing. The comms array sputtered weakly, only managing fragmented signals from distant human colonies. Most people had long abandoned this place, leaving Elias to wrestle with silence and isolation. He had chosen this outpost because it was the last place anyone had reported the Draconi, a rare, rumored species that might hold intelligence rivaling humans. Many called it a fool's quest, but Elias had spent years piecing together faint signals, patterns of energy pulses, and strange readings. He believed the creatures existed. That night, as he checked the life support monitors for the 5th time, an alert flashed on the sensor panel. A weak distress signal, almost drowned in static, blinked urgently. Elias leaned forward, heart hammering. It was faint, barely registering above the usual noise, but it was real. Something alive. Something calling. His hands moved with trained precision as he cross-checked the readings. The signal seemed to come from the lower storage bay, where abandoned cargo pods sat in dusty silence. He activated the corridor lights and moved carefully, boots echoing in the hollow metal halls. He had no idea what waited for him, but he had to check. As he reached the source, he found a small container, broken at one end, and inside it, a tiny creature lay curled in the shadows. It was no bigger than a dog, with glimmering scales that seemed to change color with the dim light. Its eyes, wide and almost human in expression, reflected fear, hunger, and intelligence all at once. Elias froze for a moment, studying it. The creature hissed softly, a sound full of warning but also pain. It was shaking, weak and injured. His stomach twisted. He had faced storms, radiation leaks, and rogue drones, but this fragile life, was different. He crouched slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Hey, it's okay," he whispered, voice low but steady. "I won't hurt you." The creature flinched but did not run. It tilted its head as if measuring him, testing whether he could be trusted. Elias felt a surge of responsibility, heavier than any manual or protocol. If he failed here, this life would be lost. And if the Draconi were intelligent, losing one could mean losing a chance to understand an entire species. Carefully, he tore a small ration bar into tiny pieces and extended his hand. The creature sniffed cautiously, then, after a tense moment, inched forward and took a piece. Its movements were deliberate, almost curious. Elias' chest swelled with a mix of relief and awe. He had expected a wild animal, a test of survival. Instead, it seemed to recognize him as something more, a protector, a caretaker, maybe even a parent. He stayed there for hours, coaxing the creature to eat, cleaning its small wounds with whatever antiseptic he had left. Each task was meticulous. One wrong move could frighten it, could harm it. And yet the creature stayed. At one point it climbed onto his chest, curling tightly against him. Elias' fingers trembled slightly as he held it. A surge of emotion ran through him. Fear, hope, determination. He whispered, "I won't let anything happen to you. Not out here. Not ever." Outside, the asteroid field shifted violently. A piece of debris scraped dangerously close to the outpost, rattling the walls and sending sparks from exposed panels. Elias' heart jumped. He knew the station's outer hull was thin. One more hit, and the outpost could vent atmosphere in seconds. His eyes flicked between the creature in his arms and the sensor's warning of approaching hazards. He had no choice but to move it somewhere safer, somewhere more secure. But the storage bay was small and the corridors were narrow. Every step forward was a calculated risk. As he carried the Draconi through the dim halls, he noticed subtle signs. The creature's scales glimmered brighter near certain panels, almost as if it could sense energy flows. Elias paused, curiosity mingling with caution. Maybe it was guiding him, showing him something he had not yet noticed. The thought gave him hope but also unease. Could he trust it, or was this a trap? He shook the doubt off and pressed forward, relying on logic, instincts, and every ounce of human courage he had cultivated over years of isolation. Finally, he reached the old laboratory chamber, a reinforced room with minimal hazards and a stable temperature. He gently placed the Draconi down, and it immediately settled, curling into a protective posture. Elias exhaled slowly. For a moment, silence returned, punctuated only by the distant rumble of asteroids. But deep inside he knew the peace would not last. Something had triggered the creature's distress, and now that it was awake, stronger and aware, the outpost would no longer be quiet. Elias looked around, determination hardening in his eyes. "We're not just surviving tonight," he murmured. "We're going to fight. Together." A soft pulse of light from the creature's scales reflected in the walls, almost like an answer. And then, far in the distance, sensors picked up movement. Something else, massive, approaching through the asteroid shadows. Elias tightened his grip on a makeshift tool, the weight of the unknown pressing on him. Whatever came next, he had to protect this life. His courage, his intelligence, his heart, it was all that stood between the Draconi and certain death. Elias moved cautiously through the laboratory, the tiny Draconi curled in a blanket of his own making. Its scales pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat he could feel in his chest, and he realized how fragile this bond truly was. One wrong step could kill it. He examined the supplies he had scavenged over months. Nutrient gels, medical kits, and a small hydroponics chamber that could keep the air clean. Nothing was perfect. Nothing was enough for a creature like this. But human ingenuity had always been Elias' greatest weapon. He wasn't about to fail now. He began synthesizing a nutrient paste, combining leftover protein gels with trace minerals and a few experimental compounds scavenged from the lab. Every measurement had to be exact. One mistake could poison the Draconi, and the creature's small body trembled in anticipation. As Elias worked, he felt the weight of every decision pressing on him. He had faced failures before, mechanical malfunctions, failed experiments, but never something alive trusting him completely in the middle of a dying outpost. A sudden alarm made him freeze. The sensors showed movement outside the reinforced lab doors. Elias' heart skipped. At first, he hoped it was nothing, maybe just debris shifting in the asteroid field. Then he realized the readings were too precise, too deliberate. Someone, or something, was approaching. Rogue miners. He had heard rumors that scavenger crews prowled the outer belts, looking for abandoned stations rich with salvage. If they found the Draconi, they wouldn't care if it lived or died, they would see it as profit, an exotic specimen to sell. Elias' mind raced. The lab's bulkhead could hold them off for a few minutes, but the corridor sensors indicated multiple intrusions. He had no weaponry, just his wits and the fragile creature in his care. He moved the Draconi closer to a makeshift hiding spot, under a reinforced table stacked with old supplies. Its small eyes followed his every movement, seemingly understanding the danger. Elias whispered, "Stay quiet. Trust me." The creature pressed itself flat against the table legs, shimmering faintly with fear. He could almost feel its pulse against his fingers. Elias then began setting traps. With limited materials, he rigged a few motion-triggered lights and a couple of makeshift electric charges along the corridor. Nothing lethal. He didn't want to risk harming the Draconi, but enough to confuse or delay intruders. He recalibrated the sensors to flicker false readings, hoping the miners would think the outpost was abandoned. Every second mattered. Every choice could be the difference between life and death. The intruders arrived faster than he expected. Shadows moved across the corridors, accompanied by the mechanical hum of drones. Elias ducked behind the bulkhead control panel, watching their patterns. They were methodical, checking each section for anomalies. One drone passed directly beneath the lab door, its lights sweeping dangerously close. Elias held his breath, heart hammering, as he silently activated a magnetic pulse that sent the drone spinning into a support beam. Sparks flew, but it worked. For now they hadn't found him. He exhaled, but there was no time to relax. The Draconi whimpered softly and Elias' chest tightened. It was not just about survival anymore. He had promised to protect this creature. It was counting on him. Every action he took now had meaning beyond himself. He moved quickly, patching up its wounds with improvised bandages soaked in antiseptic, whispering encouragements as he worked. The creature's gaze locked onto his, and Elias felt a surge of determination. He had never felt responsibility so keenly. Hours passed in tense silence. The intruders' drones had slowed, but Elias knew they would return in greater numbers. The outpost's structural integrity was failing. Even a minor collision with drifting debris could collapse corridors, trapping them both. The smallest mistake could mean death. He scanned his surroundings and realized he needed more than brute force or luck. He needed intelligence. He noticed the Draconi reacting to certain panels in the lab, its scales flashing brighter near a cluster of damaged power conduits. Elias studied it, wondering if the creature could sense energy flows. He tested a small hypothesis. When he aligned a temporary power relay to those panels, the Draconi seemed calmer, almost reassured. Its tiny body pressed closer to him, and he realized that this wasn't random, it was instinctive, maybe even intentional. The creature was helping him. But relief was brief. A louder vibration shook the outpost. The asteroid belt outside had shifted violently, sending a jagged chunk scraping past the hull. A cascade of sparks rained down the hall. The lab's temperature control unit shuddered, threatening to fail. Elias' mind raced as he recalculated the risk. If he didn't stabilize the unit immediately, the Draconi could overheat and die. With deft hands, he rerouted emergency power, sweat stinging his eyes as he tightened makeshift connections. The system hummed back to life. For a moment, silence returned. The Draconi looked at him, eyes wide, almost grateful, its body shimmering softly. Elias whispered, "We're not safe yet, but we'll survive this." A sudden flicker on the sensor display caught his attention. Something massive was moving in the asteroid shadows outside. He squinted at the monitor, heart thundering. It wasn't the miners. Something larger. Something alive. Something that could crush the outpost in seconds. Elias gritted his teeth, holding the Draconi close. He had no weapons, no reinforcements, only courage, ingenuity, and sheer will. The odds were impossible, but human determination had never failed him before. And he would not fail now. Whatever came next, he would face it. Together with this small, fragile life, he would fight. A soft vibration ran through the lab as the Draconi pressed against his chest. Elias felt it, a warning, a signal, a bond forming stronger than fear itself. Outside, the shadows moved closer, and the outpost groaned under pressure. Elias tightened his grip on the creature and whispered, "No one will take you from me. Not tonight." The lights flickered. The sensors blinked. And then, from the darkness beyond the hull, a faint, rhythmic pulse began. A pulse that didn't belong to the asteroid. Something alive was coming. Something massive. And Elias knew their fight for survival was only beginning. Elias pressed himself against the reinforced lab wall, the tiny Draconi tucked into his jacket. Its scales glimmered faintly, casting soft, shifting light across the cold metal floor. Outside, the asteroid field roared, sending shards of rock rattling against the station's hull. Yet Elias' focus was on something else entirely, a subtle, pulsing signal coming from the Draconi itself. At first, he thought it was a biological rhythm, but the pattern was too precise, too deliberate. It was communicating, guiding, giving him coordinates in a language he could barely understand. He pulled up the outpost's degraded AI console, its screen flickering and sparking with age. Carefully, he input the pulse patterns as data points, running them through the system. The AI coughed out a crude map of the nearby asteroid cluster, highlighting a glowing area deep within the field. Elias' pulse quickened. The Draconi wasn't just lost or injured, it was leading him somewhere vital. His mind raced. The coordinates pointed to a massive crystalline cavern hidden in the belt, a place humans had long dismissed as impossible. The scans suggested energy readings far beyond anything the outpost could produce, enough to sustain life and perhaps even heal the Draconi. But reaching it would be deadly. The cluster was unstable, with shifting rocks, magnetic anomalies, and unpredictable microgravity storms. And then there were the miners. If they followed, there would be no mercy, no room for mistakes. Elias had no time to hesitate. He gathered his tools, a magnetic pulse generator, spare tether lines, and his gravlift harness. He secured the Draconi in a padded carrier on his chest, careful to keep it calm. Its tiny claws clung to him, scales pressing warm against his uniform. He whispered, "Trust me. We'll get there. I promise." The creature responded with a soft trill, almost like agreement, and Elias felt a wave of determination surge through him. The journey began. He navigated the narrow corridors of the outpost to the docking bay, where a small escape shuttle waited. Its hull was battered, the controls archaic, but it was enough. Elias set the course using the Draconi's pulses, letting instinct and AI calculations work together. Every second mattered. One collision with the asteroid shards outside would shred the craft and kill them both. As they emerged into space, the true danger revealed itself. A storm of jagged debris spun unpredictably, rocks bouncing off each other with deadly force. Elias adjusted the gravlifts, using precise pulses to shift the shuttle's trajectory. Sweat dripped into his eyes, his hands gripping the controls as he calculated each movement. The Draconi's pulses quickened, almost urging him to move faster. He understood. It was guiding him, warning him, helping him survive. Halfway through the cluster, a massive rock detached from a larger asteroid, tumbling directly toward them. Elias' mind worked frantically. He had no weapons that could reach it in time, no shield strong enough to withstand a direct hit. Then he remembered the magnetic pulse generator. With a precise burst, he sent the rock spinning off course, narrowly missing the shuttle. Sparks flew, alarms blared, but the shuttle remained intact. The Draconi hissed softly, its scales glowing brighter, and Elias felt a mix of relief and awe. The miners' drones appeared shortly after, glinting in the scattered light of distant stars. They followed the energy signature, searching for whatever anomaly had triggered the sensors. Elias' heart pounded. He had to outsmart them. He engaged the shuttle's decoy protocols, creating false energy pulses that mimicked life signs. The drones followed the false trail, colliding with debris or veering off course. Each second they were delayed was a second closer to safety. Elias had no weapons, no allies, but his ingenuity, his ability to anticipate, kept them alive. The Draconi chirped urgently, pulling him toward a narrow fissure between two massive asteroids. It was risky, too small for the shuttle to pass safely. Elias hesitated. If he didn't take this route, the cavern might be unreachable. Every calculation screamed danger, but instinct whispered possibility. He adjusted the gravlifts, twisting the shuttle with millimeter precision, and threaded the gap. Sparks flew as metal scraped stone, but they made it through. The Draconi's scales pulsed intensely, almost in triumph, and Elias allowed himself a brief, exhausted smile. Ahead, the crystalline cavern emerged, glowing like a beacon in the dark void. Its walls shimmered with bioluminescent energy, and Elias could see faint life forms moving within, delicate shapes reflecting in the crystal. The readings confirmed what he had hoped. The energy was clean, life-sustaining, and perfectly aligned with the Draconi's biological signature. The creature had led him here, not by chance, but with purpose. Elias exhaled, feeling the tension drain slightly, but he didn't relax. The cluster was unstable, and the miners were still out there, somewhere in the darkness. He guided the shuttle toward the cavern entrance, slowing carefully to avoid triggering rockfalls or magnetic surges. The Draconi shifted on his chest, chirping softly, almost like gratitude. Its pulses aligned with the cavern's energy, and Elias realized it could communicate with this environment naturally, as if the crystal itself was part of its species' life cycle. As the shuttle hovered over the cavern floor, a massive shadow loomed above, moving silently among the asteroid shards. Elias' stomach tightened. Whatever it was alive, enormous, and potentially hostile. He had survived so far through courage, intelligence, and improvisation, but this new presence could end everything in an instant. He tightened his grip on the Draconi and whispered, "We've come this far, we can't fail now." The creature's scales shimmered, almost like a pulse of reassurance. The cavern lay just below, glowing and alive, a chance at survival and a chance to protect an entire species. But Elias knew the hardest part was still ahead. To survive, he would have to trust not only his mind but the tiny life that had chosen him as its father. And in the darkness above, something was watching, waiting, testing him. Elias guided the shuttle slowly over the cavern's entrance, heart pounding in his chest. The crystalline walls glowed softly, casting dancing reflections across the dark void outside. He could feel the Draconi pressing against him, its tiny claws digging into his uniform, scales shimmering like living light. It had led him here, through impossible odds, and now everything depended on this final step. The moment the shuttle's landing skids touched the cavern floor, Elias felt a pulse of energy through the metal hull. The crystals were alive with power, a subtle hum vibrating through the shuttle and into his chest. The Draconi chirped, a sharp, urgent sound, and Elias realized it wasn't just alerting him, it was guiding him to the heart of the cavern. He stepped out carefully, the Draconi clinging to his arm, and the glow from the walls illuminated the strange, jagged formations that surrounded them. Every instinct screamed caution. He had no way to know if the cavern was stable. The miners could still be in pursuit, and the crystals, though mesmerizing, radiated energy levels far beyond human-tested limits. One wrong step and the entire floor could collapse, or worse, harm the Draconi. Elias kept moving, slow and deliberate, eyes scanning every shadow and crack in the walls. The Draconi began moving on its own, hopping from one crystal formation to another, chirping and vibrating in a rhythm that seemed almost musical. Elias followed, realizing the creature was showing him the safest path. Its tiny body pulsed with energy in resonance with the cavern, as if it could communicate directly with the crystals. A faint hope bloomed in Elias' chest. Maybe this place could not only save the Draconi but also offer a way to sustain its entire species. He reached a shallow pool of luminous liquid at the cavern's center. The Draconi climbed down and dipped itself in the pool. Its scales flared brighter than ever, radiating warmth and energy. Elias watched in awe as the creature's body seemed to absorb the cavern's power. Its limbs strengthened, its breathing deepened, and its eyes shone with a clarity and intelligence that left him stunned. The tiny life that had seemed so fragile now seemed almost radiant, a miracle born from trust and perseverance. Elias knelt beside it, careful not to disturb the pool. "You're going to be okay," he whispered. "I promised I'd protect you. I won't let anything happen to you." The Draconi chirped softly, nudging his hand as if acknowledging the vow. Elias' heart swelled with a mixture of relief, pride, and unshakable responsibility. Against impossible odds they had made it this far, but the greatest challenge was still ahead. The cavern floor vibrated suddenly, faint tremors rolling through the crystalline walls. Elias tensed. The asteroid cluster outside was shifting violently, sending vibrations through the ground. But the Draconi didn't retreat. Instead, it began emitting a series of precise pulses. Elias' eyes widened as he realized the creature was sending signals, patterns of energy that could stabilize the cavern. Somehow, instinct and intelligence combined, the Draconi could manipulate the energy around it. It was teaching him, guiding him, asking him to participate. Elias adjusted his tools, connecting them to the crystals in a makeshift relay. The energy pulsed, responded, and then flowed into the Draconi in a controlled, radiant surge. Sparks and light danced across the cavern, but instead of danger, there was harmony. The creature's body glowed brighter with each pulse, and Elias could see it absorbing, adapting, thriving. Every instinct told him this was their chance. If he could help the Draconi harness this energy, it could not only survive but flourish. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt different in the glowing cavern. Elias had no way to measure it, only the steady rhythm of the Draconi's pulses. The miners' drones had not followed. They must have been misled by his decoys, but Elias couldn't relax. The asteroid cluster outside was volatile, and a single mistake could destroy the shuttle, the cavern, and the fragile creature in his arms. He focused, calculated, and trusted his judgment, guiding the energy through the crystals as the Draconi harmonized with each pulse. Finally, the cavern settled. The light softened. The Draconi stood, scales gleaming like molten gold. It chirped softly and nuzzled Elias' chest. For a brief moment, the impossible felt tangible. A life saved, a bond formed, a species' chance at survival secured by human courage and ingenuity. Elias laughed quietly, exhausted, tears stinging his eyes. He had carried the creature through danger, fear, and the unknown, and now, against every odd, they had emerged victorious. But Elias didn't let himself relax entirely. Outside, the asteroid field still rumbled, still shifted unpredictably. The miners could regroup. The universe was vast and merciless. And yet, he had seen something extraordinary. A tiny creature trusting him completely, guiding him to miracles, and surviving against impossible odds because he had refused to give up. He crouched beside the Draconi, holding it close. Its soft trill echoed in the cavern, and Elias whispered, "We've done it. You're safe, for now." And in that moment he understood something profound. Courage wasn't just facing enemies or danger. It was standing firm when everything seemed hopeless, making impossible choices, and never abandoning those who depended on you. The Draconi had chosen him, yes, but he had proven worthy of that trust. A soft vibration pulsed through the cavern again, not threatening but alive. Elias' heart tightened. Somewhere in the shadows, something watched. Something massive. But for the first time he did not feel fear. He had survived storms, predators, and human greed. He had survived because he refused to quit, because he had trusted his mind, his heart, and the fragile life that had chosen him. And now he was ready for whatever came next. The cavern shimmered, alive, promising new life, and the next challenge was only moments away. Elias stepped out of the shuttle, the Draconi perched confidently on his shoulder, its scales glowing softly in the cavern's bioluminescent light. For the first time he could see the full scale of what lay before him. The crystalline cavern stretched wider than any map had suggested, shimmering with energy that seemed almost alive. Tiny pulses ran along the walls, and Elias realized the entire place was connected, an ecosystem he could barely comprehend. It was more than a shelter, it was a sanctuary, a cradle for life, and now, for the first time, it could sustain an entire Draconi colony. He crouched beside the creature, examining the energy readings. Everything pointed to one thing: this place could save the species. But survival required more than finding a safe spot. The cavern's energy was unstable. Too much exposure could harm the Draconi, too little would leave them weak. Elias' mind raced. He had faced impossible calculations before, but nothing like this. One wrong decision could undo weeks of risk and sacrifice. Suddenly, a deep vibration ran through the cavern. The asteroid cluster outside had shifted violently again, and the miners, He had assumed they were gone, appeared at the edge of the sensor range. Drones hovered at the fringe, scanning, searching. Elias' chest tightened. He had no weapons, no backup, no chance to outrun them through conventional means. He had only his mind, the Draconi, and every ounce of courage he could summon. He glanced down at the baby Draconi. Its eyes met his, luminous and intelligent. It chirped sharply, almost urgently. Elias realized it wasn't just a creature, it was a partner. Its instincts were attuned to the cavern's energy. Perhaps it could help stabilize the environment and keep both of them alive. A surge of determination ran through him. Together they could turn the impossible into survival. Elias placed the Draconi gently on a crystalline pedestal, and it immediately began to pulse, sending precise waves of energy into the cavern. He followed its lead, connecting the makeshift relays he had assembled earlier, amplifying and channeling the pulses. The miners' drones advanced, probing, but every pulse from the Draconi created distortions that confused their sensors. Rocks shifted unpredictably, and the drones began colliding with debris, effectively trapping themselves. Elias' heart raced. He had turned a fragile life into an ally, and their combined ingenuity was holding back a force far larger than themselves. A sudden quake rattled the cavern floor. Elias stumbled but held his balance, clutching the Draconi as it intensified its pulses. The energy flowed, stabilizing the cavern, glowing brighter, and the Draconi grew stronger, more resilient. Its scales radiated warmth, almost human in their presence. Elias felt a surge of pride. Against impossible odds, through ingenuity, courage, and empathy, they were surviving. They weren't just enduring, they were thriving. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, the miners' drones fell silent, trapped or destroyed. Elias exhaled slowly, exhaustion hitting him like a tidal wave. He lowered himself to the cavern floor, the Draconi curling against his chest. Its warmth radiated into him, a tangible reminder that his choices, his courage, had mattered. He whispered, "We did it, you're safe now." The Draconi responded with a trill that resonated deep in his chest, and for the first time, Elias allowed himself to feel relief. But the most profound realization came as he scanned the cavern. In hidden alcoves, faint energy signatures suggested the presence of other Draconi, adults, perhaps, waiting for the safety signal. The baby had led him here not just for itself, but to guide humanity in saving its species. Elias felt awe. A tiny life had trusted him with a responsibility larger than he had ever imagined, and he had risen to the challenge. He spent the next hours mapping a safe path, using gravlifts to move through the cavern carefully, marking stable zones and recording energy flows. The baby Draconi chirped constantly, guiding him, teaching him. By the time he emerged from the deepest chamber, he had a plan. A way to return, lead a human expedition and secure the Draconi's survival. His mind raced with hope, excitement and fatigue all at once. The impossible odds had been beaten, not by luck but by courage, intelligence and moral determination. As he prepared the shuttle for the return journey, the baby Draconi leaped onto his shoulder. Its tiny claws clung to him, scales warm against his skin. Elias smiled, feeling a bond that went beyond language. This creature had chosen him as its father, and he had proven worthy of that trust. He whispered, "We'll bring them home, all of them." The journey back through the asteroid cluster was tense but manageable. Using the knowledge gained from the Draconi's guidance and the cavern's energy patterns, Elias navigated hazards that would have destroyed any ordinary human crew. Every challenge was met with ingenuity and quick thinking. Rogue debris diverted with magnetic pulses, unstable asteroids predicted by energy readings, and the Draconi constantly alerting him to subtle dangers. When he finally emerged near the edge of human-controlled space, the Draconi's pulses had stabilized, glowing softly like a heartbeat. Elias' heart swelled with a mixture of exhaustion and pride. Against impossible odds, he had protected a fragile life, outsmarted human greed, and survived natural dangers that would have destroyed lesser beings. Humanity had not only endured, it had excelled. Weeks later, when a team of scientists arrived to establish a permanent sanctuary for the Draconi, Elias watched the baby leap into their care with ease. Its gaze returned to him once, luminous and full of recognition. A bond had been forged stronger than fear, distance, or danger. He had done what no one else could. He had proved that courage, intelligence, and determination, the essence of humanity, could overcome the impossible. Standing outside the newly constructed sanctuary, Elias looked at the glowing cavern in the distance. The asteroid field still shifted, still roared, still tested the universe's indifference. Yet here, a tiny life thrived, a species was saved, and one human had made the impossible real. A small hand, or a tiny claw, had chosen him, but humanity had risen to meet that choice. And in that moment, Elias understood the truth of everything he had always believed. When humans refuse to give up, when courage and intelligence are combined with empathy, even the stars bend to our will. The Draconi chirped softly at his side. Elias smiled. Together they had survived, and together, they had sparked a legacy that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity had triumphed, not through weapons, not through luck, but through heart, mind, and unwavering determination.